Arsenal 2, Manchester United 3. Now, this was not a game that Manchester United won because Arsenal were poor. This was a game that Manchester United won because they were the better team on the day. Carrick gave Arteta challenges. Arteta did not know how to solve them. Let's analyze. From the preview, looking at the game against Manchester City, we already know how Carrick likes to set up his team defensively when they're not on the ball. The usual 4-4-2 with a mid block, and they try to keep space compact in the middle and then force the team to go wide. This is usually how United started defending in this game. And as usual, they would always make sure that Arsenal cannot play out through Zubimendi in the middle. Odegaard up front, most of the game has to drop back to try to conduct play from deep within, but there was no space for Arsenal to progress through the midfield. We all anticipated this. We knew this was coming. And then, of course, they would be forced to go wide. And then Arsenal would try to create some positional overloads out wide. But United coped with this. On this occasion, Arsenal has taken the ball wide. Declan Rice has gone wide. But one thing you would notice is that United were not really trying to create a positional overload there. What they were instead trying to do was create a 1-versus-1 with every player that Arsenal puts into that position. Now, on the left-hand side, you had Dalot, who did a very good job on Trossard in the first half. And then Declan Rice was the one who drops into that space on this occasion, that space between fullback and centre-back. But Kobe Menu has dropped with him into that gap to make sure that, I don't know which one it is, has dropped into that gap with him. If you just look at it here, the third person here is Hikampi, who played as a fullback in this game, who played at the left back in this game. And Maguire has stepped up to cover him there as well. United have the positional superiority there. So there is no space for Arsenal to go. And then they have to now rotate this ball to the other side again. But when it comes to the other side, keep an eye on something. Out wide, they are not doubling up on Bukayo Saka. They didn't double up on Saka in this game. They left Saka with Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw had one job in this game. Keep an eye on Saka. And for what it's worth, Luke Shaw had the most tackles, successful tackles in this game, had the most successful interceptions in this game, and it was all against Bukayo Saka. And then, as usual, the fullback, Jurrien Timber, would like to come back and also help Saka to play in between the gap. And for most part of this game, Dogu will drop deep again to almost form a back six, like it has happened in this occasion. So when United were pinned back, instead of creating positional overloads, dragging a lot of players into one part of the pitch, they would collapse into a back five or a back six and make sure that they go 1-versus-1 against everybody that Arsenal puts into that gap. So on this occasion, United had a man on everybody that Arsenal had in that position. Look at another example of this, going 1-versus-1. This is Arsenal going wide again and trying to create space out wide. But one thing you would notice that United have collapsed into a back six. It's this 6-2-2 shape that United has collapsed into. The key thing is that if you look at the 5 players that Arsenal have inside the box, everybody has a man on them. And one thing that was a recurring theme in this game was this Luke Shaw taking care of Bukayo Saka and Dogu taking care of Timber whenever Timber leaves his fullback position to create an overload out wide. It was the same thing happening on the other side as well. Arsenal were not faring better on the other side. And then United played 4 people in a diamond shape in front of that back six. It didn't matter how much Arsenal tries to rotate the ball. It was the same thing. There was no space across that United line. And then going back, there was no space as well. But now, the question is, why did Arteta not simply commit extra players into that defensive line to put Manchester United under more pressure and probably create some situational overload like they did against Inter? I think Arteta got an early warning in this game that when United collapsed into that back six, the 4 people they had in front of the ball, there was something going on with those 4 people that was particularly dangerous. Let me show you just 2 examples of what potentially could happen when Arsenal committed extra players into that attack. Now, this is early on in the first half, just 10 minutes into the game. And it's the same setup where they are trying to create overloads out wide. Now, what you will notice is that Arsenal had 5 players inside the box, another player. And mind you, this is Hikampi here. Hikampi, who should have been the left back on the other side, has come here to create a positional overload. And then that's the 4 players. This is the 4 players that United usually have in front of the ball. Now, immediately Arsenal loses the ball on this occasion, there is a problem. The problem is you have your left back here who has now come over to create a positional overload here, which was not successful. What that means is that Gabriel and Saliba had to spread themselves wide to cover ground. And then the only person in the middle who chased this counter-attack down was Trossard. And once they lost the ball, United were immediately away already. Now, the sad thing here is that because Gabriel and Saliba has had to split wide, of course, Gabriel had to go out wide because Hikampi, who was the fullback, there has joined the attack to create an overload. And that presented United with this opportunity. It's unfortunate that Ahmad made a bad pass here, because if Ahmad had played a better ball far ahead of Trossard here, I think Mbeumo would definitely have beaten Trossard for pace because he was in front of Trossard already. Or if he had opted for the more direct route of trying to find Bruno Fernandes over on this side of the pitch, the situation would have been a 2 versus 2 in that attack. Lord knows what would have happened. But that's not the only occasion. Look at this again. This is Arsenal attack again. And then they've managed to bring the ball forward and are pouring men forward. Like in the first instance, they have 7, I think they've committed 6 or 7 players into this attack. Once they lose the ball here, it's those 4 players that United have in front of the ball again. It just took one touch from Bruno Fernandes and he has sent Mbeumo through again. Although they didn't end up scoring from this goal because Bruno Fernandes missed his shot. But I think Arteta saw this early, that the more player he commits into that attack, the more open he leaves Arsenal at the back. And Carrick had players positioned looking for exact opportunities like that. So I think it was common sense for Arsenal to play a bit more conservative. But the back 5 and the 1v1 that Carrick was playing, not creating overloads in defense, needed a high level of concentration to play. I think the only time they lost that concentration and they were pulled apart, they got unlucky and they conceded. Look at that Arsenal's first goal. United started in the 4-4-2, and then once Arsenal were coming into that attack, they naturally dropped into that back 5 to become a 5-3-2 or a 5-2-3, depending on how you look at it. And what I want you to keep an eye on here is that once they collapsed into that back 5 and prevented Arsenal from going through the middle, they were more than comfortable going 1 versus 1 with the players that Arsenal had, with the 5 players that Arsenal had pushed up in that attack. And then, as usual, there were 2 people making sure that Arsenal could not progress through the middle. This is Odegaard here, and he had 2 people on him to make sure that Arsenal cannot progress through him. So the only option is to go out wide with Saka, and his header was quite poor, allowing Saka to control the ball and then just put it into the box again. And again, they were not tight on Odegaard, and Odegaard was able to put this ball into the box. And I think even at that, Martinez was really, really very tight on Timber, and he was just unfortunate that the ball bounced off him. But that notwithstanding, the most impressive thing, in my opinion, about Manchester United in this game wasn't really what they did off the ball. I expected that. It was what they did on the ball. They didn't have more possession. Against Manchester City, they only managed 30% of the possession. They were mainly just looking for chances on the transition and counter-attacks. But in this game, United actually held on to the ball, especially in the second half. They held on to the ball. They had less possession than Arsenal. But whenever they had possession, they were able to hold the ball, squeeze the middle of the pitch, and play small, intricate passes within themselves in the middle of the pitch. I think this shocked Arsenal because in the second half, the goal that United scored, up until when they scored that Doku goal, for about, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes before that, United probably had 90% of the possession. They just held on to the ball. And it was those intricate passes that led to that Doku goal. Again, this is United holding on to the ball and actually pushing out. And then Doku received the ball in middle. Notice that they compressed the pitch with Dalot. Dalot has moved infield, and then the person holding the width at this edge of your screen here is just Ahmad. And what this does now is that we're able to pull Arsenal apart, stretch Arsenal, at the same time squeeze them in the middle and stretch the back line, such that with this intricate passing between Bruno Fernandes and Dogu, Chinazai Pere this guy had no right to hit that ball from that distance that he did. No, I don't think anybody saw that goal coming. Nobody saw it coming. He just hit it, and it was world class. I know that a lot of people will put this down to United scoring 2 wonderful goals or 2 unexpected goals, but I don't think the goals were totally unexpected. Like I said, in the 5 minutes leading up to that game, United had all of the ball. Arsenal, they squeezed that middle. They were playing intricate passes around Arsenal in that middle of the pitch. That was what created that chance. Arteta was at this point becoming very conservative, not wanting to put a foot out because, again, United were a threat on the counter. And then, of course, it came that Cunha goal at the end of it, which I think was still United's willingness to control the ball in the middle of the pitch. It was a long goal kick, as usual, but once they brought that ball down, on this occasion now, it was Ahmad here who has moved infield now to create that compression. It was the same intricate passes between 2 people again, and once he turns, it just been impossible goal. Like I said, this is not a game that United won because Arsenal were poor. This was a game that United won because they were a better team on the day. I think Carrick's overall Manchester United tactics needs its own separate video. That is something that we have to look at. intimately. But I would like to see United play against a team that will not come out to play them, against a team that United has to take the initiative and take the game to the opposition. After that, then we can now evaluate Carrick's tactics altogether in a different video. But again, if you enjoy tactical analysis, this is what we do here. Hit the subscribe button